Welcome back to Badass Woman 50 Plus. I am Robin Lane, psychotherapist, producer, director. We are a pro-age show. At my age of 86, if you are 50, you could be my granddaughter. If you're 60 or 70, my daughter, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, my kid sister. I am a tribal elder with earned attitude, and all of you, junior to me, you're still children.
Hi, I am Natalie H. Rogers, actress, author, MSW, psychotherapist, and the founder of Talk Power, a panic clinic for public speaking workshops. I'm an aged, mysterious lady and author of the book Talk Power, the mind body way to speak without fear. Robin and I are the hosts of Badass Women, and my attitude is my middle name. Though we are heartfelt about what we say, we also like to entertain, so some of our visuals are meant to amuse.
A great deal has happened to all of us, and most especially to New York City, where Natalie is, and in Miami, where I am just now. A pandemic has arrived, bringing hardship and wreckage and testing our mettle like nothing ever before. As for my life, personally, Harvey Krause, my beloved husband of 39 years, died April 19th at 1:14 a.m. in hospital, where I couldn't enter, and our religious service was by way of Zoom and delayed by 10 days because the medical examiner had so many bodies to write death certificates for. No one has been able to hold my hand, put their arm around me, or offer a shoulder to cry on other than virtually. At this time, at 86 years of age, I'm in too high a risk group to fly home. Well, we had written today's program in early March, and at that time I was scheduled to come back to shoot this show in the M&M studios, and then everything got shut down. But it turns out that our theme, optimism versus pessimism, couldn't be more relevant. It also turns out that both Natalie and I have practiced what we preach. And since our theme was very much related to how we have both been getting through our mutual isolation and my personal loss, we decided to stay with the subject.
A badass woman is many things, but her mainstay is self-respect. Thus, she radiates confidence regardless of the storm raging without or within. She remains grounded, optimistic, and compassionate. These traits enable her to gracefully master life's difficulties, such as the kind we are now all coping with. We survivors all have some badass in us. So let's get started making those muscles ever stronger.
The states of optimism and pessimism affect our lives in more ways than most of us are aware. For one thing, an optimistic outlook doesn't just feel good, it also affects your pocketbook. If you are an optimist, guess what? Research shows that you are statistically likely to make more money, and as you'd like to have more time to enjoy that money, Boston University of Medicine and Harvard School of Public Health have linked optimism to prolonged life and lower risk of chronic disease. On average, a pessimistic attitude will actually shorten your life expectancy by 11 to 15%.
Optimism isn't just of one stripe. Unrealistic optimism, like thinking that a risky lifestyle might harm others but not you, or continuous pursuit in a field with few openings, or staying in a troubled relationship with a horrible boyfriend, believing that it can end well, is as screwy as walking around without a mask and sitting next to a coughing stranger. Even before the crisis, a lead story in Psychology Today questioned whether the U.S. decrease in overall longevity was due to a lowering of optimism, since the CDC had found that over the last decade, The suicide rate for women in age group 45 to 85 had, along with alcohol abuse, increased. Although these statistics appeared before the virus, isolation and economic upheaval caused by the pandemic are resulting in a sharp spike, and even more people are seeking psychiatric assistance. In the coming years, the ultimate marker of the virus's mental toll will show up in the national suicide rate.
There are many roads that lead to positive thinking. One doesn't have to be born a happy camper. Now, coming of age, as I did in the shadow of the Depression and World War II, the grown-ups around me were either optimistic about the years ahead or pessimists, still dwelling on the hardships of the past. My mom was a pessimist, my dad a mixture. It was my aunt next door who was the saving grace. Questions regarding anything in the future, be it getting an ice cream cone or going roller skating, the response from my mother was always, "We will see." And when asked, "How's the family?" no matter how good, she would shrug. So, a special occasion had to occur for her to dress up, but my aunt, she would vacuum in high heels, dressed to the nines. At age 14, a teacher saw something in me and told my parents that I should apply for the High School of Performing Arts in Manhattan. I am not letting my child take a subway to the city. Who knows what could happen? And if she has to afford lessons, well, we can't pay for that, not us. And if she doesn't get in, it'll break her heart. All my mom could see was how it would turn out badly. I went next door. "Of course you must audition. Look at you. You're always putting on an act. You don't need lessons." "Stop with the tears. I'll talk to your father." Performing arts changed my life, not only because of the skills that I acquired, but for what it did to my outlook. Never had I been around so much sunshine. No matter the times that my classmates would try out for a part and get rejected, they would bounce right back, thrilled for the next chance. This way, I witnessed how failure could be an opportunity not for flight, but to learn how to do better. My mom, she could magnify the one danger in any situation and make sure that I ventured no further. At my school, I was shown a different way, and that vitamin D sensibility has stayed with me, guiding me through many of my life's toughest times up until this very moment.
What is so astounding is the relationship between optimism, pessimism, and, are you ready for this? Alzheimer's. The NIH's 5-year study of 5,000 folk younger than we are, as who isn't, concluded that Americans with negative belief systems are significantly more likely to develop dementia than it would appear. A stunning 44% differential.
What accounts for this is optimism's byproduct, problem solving. Researchers believe that the health, the success, and longevity of optimists are due to this problem solving ability. Certain that she's going to surmount whatever challenges she may face leads an optimist to quickly develop a plan B. Having another option enables her to better cope with stress so that her heart is not pounding away, working overtime, and her blood pressure remains stable. A positive mental outlook is critical to overcoming obstacles. Think of it this way: positivity is radar in search of solutions. The pessimist, expecting the worst, has no plan B and goes into the fight or flight syndrome, and this opens the floodgates to stress hormones that work overtime, ultimately wearing down the immune system.
Being optimistic doesn't mean living in la-la land. Realistic optimists triumph because they refuse to allow defeat to discourage them. One of the most dramatic examples of this is the Stockdale paradox. Admiral Stockdale, a prisoner of war for 8 years in North Vietnam, was tortured and held in solitary confinement for long periods of time. When asked how he survived, he said,
I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted that not only would we get out, but that I would prevail and turn the experience into the defining event in my life. Those who did not survive were the unrealistic optimists. They were the ones who said we were going to be out by Christmas. Christmas would come and go. And then they would say, we're going to be out by Easter. And then it would be Thanksgiving. And then it would be Christmas again. And they would die of a broken heart. You must not confuse the faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be.
He could not know when his current situation would end, but his optimistic, reality-based nature gave him the unwavering confidence that he would survive. And knowing that under those dire circumstances, social support was a lifeline, he developed a tapping system that he taught his fellow Americans to communicate with. He has been an inspiration to me. When we held the memorial for my husband on Zoom, I was fine until the end of the ceremony when they put up a picture of my beloved, one that I had actually picked out myself that afternoon. But when I saw this photo in the religious setting, it made my loss so final that I fell apart. I could not stop crying. I had to tell the rabbi to take the picture down, and then I shut Zoom off and ran to the couch and screamed and cried hysterically. I was in so much pain that I wanted to put my head through the wall. And as I ran toward the wall, I passed a bottle of bourbon that was sitting on the counter, and I thought, I can always put my head through the wall. Let me make a drink first. I drank Manhattans. I got the glass out, got the ice out, got the vermouth out, found the cherries, and made the drink, and it all took so long that by the time I was already calmer, and so when I finished it, I was myself again. After a couple of weeks of mourning, I began to think of Admiral Stockdale and of all the people who had suffered unimaginable circumstances. And I forced myself to focus diligently only on the good times Harvey and I shared, and not on the end, and to count my blessings. And trust me, it wasn't easy.
Oprah grew up in abject poverty and was habitually abused. Now Oprah's gifts to society are legendary. In this case, turning a lemon into lemonade is not some magical trick. The ability to overcome horrendous circumstances is due to the plasticity of the brain. Now, until a couple of decades ago, neuroscience was unaware that the adult brain could change. Previously, scientists and common knowledge believed that once the brain reached maturity, it steadily declined. Now, technology, however, has made it possible to actually see how the brain changes.
Brain plasticity refers to the ability of the brain to grow new neural patterns and change regardless of age. For example, plasticity occurs when someone has a stroke and then undergoes rehabilitation. Now, rehabilitation forces the brain to create new pathways that replace those areas of the brain that were injured, and modern scans make such changes visible. When you master anything new and you practice it consistently, the area in the brain where that skill developed increases in size. It is now evident that our brain continues to have the ability to remodel itself up until our last breath. And that is why the brain is always capable of rewiring and adapting. Put it this way, neurons that fire together, they wire together.
So the question is, if optimism is the way to go, can a 50 plus person develop this attitude when life's experiences have been so painful? And is it intrinsic to her nature? And if so, how?
The answer is yes. So much of our thinking is on automatic pilot. Walking back negativity can be done by catching yourself in the act. It's important to understand that focusing on the negative is actually obsessing, which is not a creative state, and so it can never lead to finding a positive solution, which is what you want. And optimism can be learned by, first, training ourselves to identify when we are in a negative mode, and then, B, training ourselves to cease and desist, and then, C, substituting a positive thought for the negative one, and it doesn't matter how simple or basic that thought is. It takes real effort to do this. But the fact is that you can. This reaching out to positivity is a badass muscle that neuroscience now shows us that we can develop.
Robin, you mentioned earlier that there are many paths to optimism. Well, for many years, meditation practice has been a saving grace for me, and would you believe it has actually changed my life? In March, just as I was acclimating to the shock of the pandemic and accepting the idea of staying home and not doing the tango anymore, I discovered that a man I had been teaching public speaking classes for in China had moved to Canada, and he had taken the name of my company, Talk Power. This was a name I had created and been using for 25 years. Now that he was living in Canada, he was advertising Talk Power as the name of his business. I cannot express the feeling of shock and the betrayal I felt when I objected. He said he could see nothing wrong because his company was not in the USA. Nevertheless, both our names appeared on Google. I was beside myself. What a stab in the back from a man I considered my friend, and to come at such a time. My lawyer told me that as the other company was in Canada, I was up against a wall. On top of that, the coronavirus was ruining my life because I could no longer conduct any workshops. Group meetings were not allowed. That meant that I wouldn't be receiving any salary for an unimaginable period. All this bad news happened at the same time, and it had a very negative effect on me. I was so enraged, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. My business that I had developed and nurtured for over 25 years into a successful program for people who had an intense fear of public speaking was seriously threatened. And my finances, they were in big trouble. If that were not enough, being all alone and listening to the news of the illness and the number of the sick and dying and being paranoid about getting in the elevator with a neighbor really did me in. And I'll say again, I couldn't do the tango. In 1 week, I went from being a confident, successful woman to feeling weak and overwhelmed. Well, after 3 weeks of psychological disintegration, some part of me came to the rescue. I realized I couldn't go on like that. I had to do something to stop this terrible spiral that would lead to illness. I decided that I would go back to my practice of meditation, which, in the course of all this craziness and anguish, I had abandoned. You know, that was one of the smartest decisions I ever made. I carved out a time each morning, and I would sit and concentrate on diaphragmatic breathing, slowly repeating the mantra I knew so well, Om Aim Saraswati Namaha. As the days passed, I grew increasingly distant from what had happened. In the calm that I was now beginning to feel, I realized that this unfortunate event was just a blip on my screen, and if I could go and let go of the pain the stolen name had caused me, I would be able to cope with the virus. I could join some Zoom poetry group for socializing and Skype with my darling daughter and my grandchildren and figure out another way to earn a living. I awakened to the fact that my health, my peace of mind were my first priorities, that I would regain my strength and creativity because I am a badass survivor. I would make things work out just as I have always done. I had a mask, a plastic shield, and with 6 feet of social distancing, I could take a trip to Costco without feeling that I was on a suicide mission. Well, Surprise, surprise. Early in May, the man sent me an email informing me that he decided to give up the top of my name. But even if he hadn't, my meditation practice and the peace it restored had already saved my well being. I had rebounded. I have come to realize that no matter what the disappointments and frustrations, I am unsinkable!
Barbara Fredrickson, a psychologist at the University of North Carolina, studies the role of positive emotions. Her research concluded that it is to the extent that we are able to experience positive emotions in our everyday activities, say something as simple as playing with your pet, that builds up, and it is what determines who flourishes in this life and who does not. The theory being that over time, accumulating micro moments of positivity results in greater overall well-being, which can be so transformative as to provide a buffer against stress and depression. I think I'm a living example. I was so crazy about my husband, crazy in love, and we went through all the colors of the rainbow together, from fun to disagreements and back to love again, the way it is when love is deep. But it built up, because here I am, within 6 weeks of his death, and I'm in isolation. And I'm fine. I'm myself again.
We were set to do an interview with the beautiful, talented opera singer, Christina Fontanelli. We invited her to be our guest because her religious beliefs have been her mainstay. When in crisis, she always found peace, serenity, and answers to her profound connection with her Lord. But since the MN studios are closed and we're all in different locales, we couldn't have an interview where we ask questions and share thoughts. Christina has been kind enough to film herself at home. So, instead of a dialogue, it will be more of a monologue. Recently, she has recovered from COVID. Let's listen to her and about her faith that kept her from sinking into despair.
Hello, Robin. Hello, Natalie. Hello, all the viewers of the wonderful Badass Women program. Thank you for inviting me to share a very important message, the message that has changed my life profoundly. How I battled through, specifically, not only many challenging things in my own life, but very recently, the battle I faced with COVID-19. I have traveled all over the world. I have sung on sound stages. I have appeared on PBS television. You may recognize me from hosting for Andrea Bocelli and Michael Bublé. And I've been on sound stages and film sets. But there's nothing quite like being home alone, severely ill, with a virtual doctor's visit where they tell you, just stay there, take Tylenol, drink fluids, and in my case, pray. I was here alone, quarantined in my New York City apartment, myself and my creator. I'm used to being with my creator, and I love being with him. And that is the message I'd like to share with you this evening. I have learned to put my faith and my trust in God. You don't have to make an appointment. You don't have to spend any money and see if your insurance will cover it. Just speak to him. And as I was laying there, alone, in my bed, and in certain moments severely in pain, racking with pain, I cried out from the bottom of my soul the name of Jesus, the greatest healer. I was not afraid to die, and I knew that could be a possibility. I was calling his name to stop the pain, and he did. He stopped it. Now, the journey that I was not afraid of was the one that possibly I could have passed into the next realm. I do believe in heaven. I suffered emotionally, spiritually, even to the point of being suicidal. My mind was in agony and in anguish and worried like so many people today. But When my brother passed in a car crash, he was 21 and I was 18. And that's when my life's spiritual journey began. When my fiancé became diagnosed with a brain tumor, I started reading books. Proof of Heaven, written by a neuroscientist, about his journey to heaven after being diagnosed as dead. He was an atheist, didn't believe in anything, and he describes his journey to heaven. Then he came back to this planet to tell us to write a best-selling book. And I read the book about the little boy, 6 years old, Heaven is for Real, where they document his journey to heaven and my journey as I got closer to Jesus and my faith, and I calmed down and I trained my brain to lean on God, because actually my faith has brought me to the understanding of the phrase that Jesus taught us, I will give you the peace that surpasses all understanding. And that's what I had, and I've had many times in my life. And now we are all battling through this profound journey with this disease on this planet, this pandemic. And we are facing so many challenging things on this planet. I have, for the most part, deep and profound peace. I wish this for you, and I thank you so much, Robin and Natalie, for giving me the chance and the opportunity to share this.
And now I'd like to present to you one of the most beautiful prayers ever set to music, the incredible Visi d'Arte from Giacomo Puccini's opera Tosca. Thank you so much. Stay peaceful and stay safe.
Thank you, Christina. What an honor it has been to have you on our show. I know our audience has truly enjoyed the pleasure.
At our ages, being able to film this program so that the quality is good enough to send to our editor, the awesome Peter Kostick, is clear evidence of the brain's plasticity.
So ladies, let's be badass women. 50 plus, be your inspiration.
Remember, folks, we are on the last Tuesday of every month. See ya next time.